Most people spend 30 years building retirement savings and about 45 minutes deciding how to take money out. That 45 minutes is where the real damage happens. And here's the part nobody says out loud. Pulling $20,000 from the wrong account can make $30,000 of your Social Security suddenly taxable, spike your Medicare premiums by hundreds of dollars a month, and set off a tax chain reaction that quietly costs you 6 figures over a 20-year retirement. I'm going to show you exactly how that chain reaction works, the specific sequence that diffuses it, and using a couple in their late 60s with real dollar amounts, how 2 different withdrawal strategies produce wildly different lifetime tax bills. The difference will make you angry. Let's go. By the way, I built a free early retirement calculator because most online ones are mathematically wrong. It uses BlackRock and Vanguard logic to expose the weak points in your plan, and I only ask for your email to send the report so I don't store any of your financial data link in the description. Here's the central image I want you to hold in your head for this entire video. Imagine you have 3 buckets of firewood stacked next to your fireplace. The first bucket is dry cedar burns hot, burns clean, 0 smoke. That's your Roth IRA. The second bucket is slightly damp oak. Burns fine, gives off a little smoke, neighbors don't love it, but it works. That's your taxable brokerage account. The third bucket is wet pine soaked in 2 days of river water. It burns eventually, but it fills the entire room with smoke, makes everyone's eyes water, and the smell gets into everything. That's your traditional IRA and your 401k. Now, most people walk over to the wet pine first because that bucket is the biggest. And then they spend the next 20 years wondering why everything smells like smoke. The wet wood principle is this: every log you pull from the wet pile counts as ordinary income. The IRS treats it exactly like a paycheck. And the problem is never the tax on that one log. It's the chain reaction that log sets off. We're going to cover that chain reaction in detail because it's not one mistake. It's 3 overlapping traps that trigger each other. And if you walk into all 3 in the same year, which is more common than you'd think, it's a genuinely brutal outcome for someone who did everything right. In a few minutes, I'm going to show you the Medicare surcharge trap, how a single IRA withdrawal can quietly add thousands to your insurance premiums 2 years later, long after you've forgotten you made the withdrawal. But first, let me walk you through the first trap, because this one already has a name in academic retirement planning literature, and that name is the tax torpedo. The Social Security tax torpedo. Sounds dramatic? It is. Here's the underlying math. The federal government taxes your Social Security benefits based on something called your combined income. That's your adjusted gross income, plus any tax-free interest, plus half of your Social Security benefits. If you're married filing jointly and your combined income is under $32,000, your Social Security benefits are completely tax-free at the federal level. Between $32,000 and $44,000, up to 50% of your benefits become taxable ordinary income. Above $44,000, and this is where it gets punishing, up to 85% of your benefits can be taxed as ordinary income. Now, here's the quiet horror embedded in that math. Those thresholds, $32,000 and $44,000, have not been adjusted for inflation since 1984. 1984. The 85% tier was added in 1993 and also never indexed to inflation. What was designed as a tax specifically on wealthy retirees now catches an enormous chunk of the American middle class. A couple with modest Social Security and a small IRA withdrawal can stumble directly into the torpedo zone without knowing it existed. Let me tell you about Ron. Ron retired at 66 with $450,000 in a traditional IRA, a small pension of $12,000 a year, and Social Security benefits of $24,000 a year. His financial advisor told him to pull living expenses from the IRA first because it was the biggest account and it had to come out eventually. That reasoning is not technically wrong. What the advisor didn't walk Ron through was what happened to his Social Security when he did it. Ron needed $30,000 beyond his pension and Social Security to cover his actual spending. So he pulled $30,000 from the IRA. His adjusted gross income went up. His combined income pension plus IRA withdrawal plus half of Social Security crossed $44,000. Suddenly, 85% of his $24,000 in Social Security, which is $20,400, became taxable income. Ron didn't pay tax on the $30,000 he pulled. He effectively paid tax on closer to $50,000. When you account for the Social Security clawback effect, his marginal tax rate on that IRA withdrawal was closer to 40%. Ron thought he was in the 12% bracket. He was not in the 12% bracket. This isn't an edge case. It's a structural feature of a tax law that hasn't been updated in 40 years, inflating into relevance for more retirees every single year. And it fires specifically when you pull wet wood at the wrong time. Here's the counterintuitive move. A Roth withdrawal doesn't count in your combined income calculation. A qualified distribution from a Roth IRA is invisible to the Social Security torpedo. A long-term capital gain from your taxable brokerage does technically count as income. But if your overall taxable income is low enough, those gains are taxed at 0% federally. In 2025, married couples filing jointly can realize up to $96,700 in long-term capital gains and qualified dividends at 0% if their taxable income is low enough. So the sequence isn't about which account is biggest or which one is pre-tax money. It's about which dollar does the least collateral damage when it comes out. By the way, hit subscribe if you like the content. Otherwise, YouTube's algorithm may never show you my videos again. Now, speaking of collateral damage that hits you after the fact, the second trap is sneakier. You don't feel it until 2 years later, which makes it almost impossible to emotionally connect to the decision that caused it. IRMA, income-related monthly adjustment amount. The government's polite way of saying, you earned too much money 2 years ago, so we're now charging you more for Medicare. In 2025, if your modified adjusted gross income from 2023 is above $106,000 as a single filer or $212,000 as a married couple filing jointly, your Medicare Part B and Part D premiums start climbing in tiers. The first tier adds roughly $74 per person per month to your standard Part B premium. At the highest tier, that surcharge is $443.90 per person per month. Do the math on that top tier. For a married couple, over $10,650 per year. Every year, they stay above that threshold in additional Medicare premiums on top of their standard premiums. But the truly punishing part of IRMA isn't the top tier. It's the cliff structure. IRMA is designed in discrete brackets, which means being $1 over a threshold costs you exactly the same as being $10,000 over it. There is a documented pattern in Medicare enrollment data where retirees take a large IRA distribution late in the year, unexpected expense, market opportunity, helping a family member, and that single withdrawal pushes their income just over an IRMA threshold by a small amount. 2 years later, when their Medicare premiums jump, they don't remember the withdrawal. They call their insurance company confused. The insurance company can't help them. The decision that caused this is 2 years in the past. Let me tell you about Margaret. Margaret was 68, widowed, living in Florida. She'd been careful about income management spending from her brokerage account, taking small IRA distributions, keeping her combined income below the torpedo threshold. In the fall of her 68th year, her furnace failed and her car needed a transmission replacement. She needed $22,000 and needed it quickly. Her brokerage account had taken a loss that year, and she didn't want to lock it in by selling. So she pulled $22,000 from her traditional IRA manageable tax that year. She moved on, forgot about it. 2 years later, she turned 70. She goes on Medicare. Her Part B premium comes in at $348.90 a month instead of the standard $185. She calls the Social Security Administration bewildered. The representative explains that her 2023 modified adjusted gross income, which included the emergency IRA withdrawal, pushed her above the first IRMAA threshold for a single filer. That's roughly $2,000 more per year in premiums, potentially for many years, because of one unplanned withdrawal when the furnace broke. The wet wood smoked in autumn of her 68th year. The smell followed her into her 70s. Now, here's where people get this wrong. They assume IRMA is a problem for high-income retirees. It is not. It's a problem for any retiree who has a single high-income year, a Roth conversion, an IRA withdrawal, a property sale, an inheritance that happens to cross one of those hard thresholds. And the 2-year look-back means the connection between decision and consequence is almost impossible to feel in the moment. Here's the good news, buried in the IRMAA mechanic. Roth withdrawals don't count in your modified adjusted gross income for IRMAA purposes. If you need $22,000 for an emergency furnace and transmission situation, pulling from the Roth instead of the IRA means zero IRMA exposure, zero Social Security torpedo exposure, and zero ordinary income tax. The dry wood burns clean in every dimension. I want to introduce you to someone who's going to follow us through the rest of this video because his situation illustrates everything we're talking about. His name is David. David is 64, recently retired, feels good about his numbers. He has $800,000 in a traditional IRA that was rolled over from his 401k, $150,000 in a Roth, and $200,000 in a taxable brokerage account. His plan is logical, sequential, intuitive. Live off the taxable account for a few years, then switch to the IRA when the brokerage runs low, keep the Roth for real emergencies. David's plan feels organized. David's plan is going to cost him somewhere between $80,000 and $120,000 in unnecessary taxes over a 20-year retirement if he doesn't change it. We'll come back to David. Stay with me, because this next part is where the wet wood problem turns into a time bomb. The third trap isn't what happens when required minimum distributions start. It's what you build or fail to diffuse in the decade before they start. Here's the mechanic. Under the Secure II Act passed in 2022, if you were born between 1951 and 1959, your required minimum distributions from traditional IRAs and 401ks begin at age 73. If you were born in 1960 or later, RMDs begin at 75. Each year, the IRS calculates your required withdrawal by dividing your account balance by a life expectancy factor from the Uniform Lifetime Table. At age 73, that factor is roughly 26.5, meaning if you have $1 million in your traditional IRA at 73, your first required minimum distribution is approximately $37,700. You do not have a choice. Markets are down, pull it anyway. You don't need the money, pull it anyway. It counts as ordinary income. It adds to your combined income. It potentially makes more of your Social Security taxable. It can push you into a higher IRMA tier. One forced withdrawal can set off all three traps simultaneously. Now, look at David. David has $800,000 in his traditional IRA at 64. If he does nothing except let it grow at a conservative 6% annually for 9 years, by age 73, that account is worth approximately $1,350,000. His first required minimum distribution is about $50,900. His second RMD is larger. By the late 70s, he's being forced to pull $60,000, $70,000 a year in taxable income, whether he needs it or not. Add Social Security on top of that, and his combined income easily clears the $44,000 torpedo threshold every single year. He is permanently in the 85% Social Security taxation zone for the rest of his life. You think the problem is the size of David's RMD at 73. It's not. The problem is that David is 64 and sitting in the most favorable tax position he'll ever be in again, and he's not doing anything about it. This is the "you think X is the problem, but actually Y is the problem" moment this whole video has been building toward. The withdrawal order problem in retirement is usually framed as a question you answer at the point of withdrawal. What account do I pull from this month? That is not when you answer this question. You answer it between ages 60 and 72, in the window before Medicare IRMAA looks back at your income, before Social Security has fully started, before RMDs are forcing your hand. The pre-retirement decade is the most important tax planning window of your financial life. And most people waste it because they're relieved to be done working and assume the money stuff will sort itself out. I'll figure out the tax stuff when I actually need the money. Great, the IRS will be right there waiting. Very punctual, excellent record keeping. Here's what David can actually do. Right now, at 64, his taxable income is essentially zero. He hasn't claimed Social Security. He's not yet subject to Medicare IRMA. After the 2025 standard deduction for married filing jointly $30,000, his taxable income is near the floor. The 12% tax bracket for married couples in 2025 runs from $23,851 up to $96,950 of taxable income. David can convert large amounts of his traditional IRA into his Roth at 12%. That's a guaranteed 12-cent cost to eliminate what will otherwise be a 22-cent or higher cost later, plus the Social Security and IRMA multiplier effects. If David converts $40,000 per year from his IRA over 8 years, ages 64 through 71, he moves $320,000 from wet wood to dry wood. He pays $4,800 per year in tax on each conversion at 12%. Total conversion cost, roughly $38,400 over 8 years. In exchange, his IRA at 73 is based on a smaller starting balance. His RMDs are smaller. His combined income is lower. His Social Security taxation is lower. His IRMAA exposure is lower. And his Roth, now substantially larger, is available for the rest of his life, completely tax-free, with no required minimum distributions for original Roth IRA owners. David doesn't earn more. He doesn't find a loophole. He just stops burning wet wood and starts drying it out in advance. The dry wood burns clean. This is the whole principle. Now, let me make this concrete with a real comparison. Tom and Linda, married, ages 67 and 65, recently retired. They want to spend $90,000 per year after tax. No pension. Combined Social Security, if claimed now, $48,000 per year. Tom is delaying his benefit until age 70 for a higher monthly amount. Linda claims hers at her full retirement age of $18,000 per year for her. Their accounts, $700,000 in traditional IRA and 401k combined, $300,000 in Roth IRAs, $500,000 in a taxable brokerage account with a cost basis of $300,000, meaning $200,000 of that $500,000 is unrealized long-term capital gain. Both are healthy. They expect to live well into their 80s. They'd like to leave something for their kids. Here are two strategies. Strategy A is what most people do. Strategy B is what the tax code actually rewards. Strategy A, pull from the IRA first, because it's the biggest account and it has to come out eventually. They need to supplement Linda's $18,000 in Social Security to reach their $90,000 spending target. So they pull $72,000 from the IRA. Their combined income, the IRA withdrawal, plus half of Linda's Social Security, $72,000 plus $9,000 equals $81,000. That is well above $44,000. 85% of Linda's $18,000 in Social Security, $15,300, becomes taxable income. After the $30,000 standard deduction for married filing jointly in 2025, their taxable income is around $57,300. Federal tax, approximately $6,500, not catastrophic in year one. But they've done 0 Roth conversions. Their IRA is growing. Their RMDs at 73 will be enormous. And every year this continues, 85% of their Social Security is taxable. The wetwood pile is not getting smaller, it's compounding. Strategy B, cover spending, primarily from the taxable brokerage realizing long-term capital gains that fall in the 0% federal bracket given their overall income level, and add a $15,000 Roth conversion to fill the 12% bracket. Their combined income on Strategy B is lower because capital gains at 0% don't hit the combined income formula the same way IRA dollars do. They pay roughly $1,800 in tax on the conversion. Their IRMA look-back 2 years from now shows a clean picture modified adjusted gross income well below $212,000. Their IRA is $15,000 smaller than it would have been in Strategy A. Their Roth is $15,000 larger. do this for 8 years across their 60s, and they've moved $120,000 from wetwood to drywood at an average 12% rate, roughly $14,400 total in conversion, taxes paid. Under Strategy A, those same dollars would exit as RMDs in their 70s at 22% or higher, with Social Security and IRMAA multiplier effects layered on top. Academic research on retirement tax optimization, including work published through the Journal of Financial Planning, consistently estimates the lifetime tax savings from strategic Roth conversion windows in the six-figure range for middle-class households with meaningful traditional IRA balances. Same accounts, same spending, different sequence, six-figure difference. That's the wetwood principle in action. Here's where this gets really interesting and where a lot of people miss the practical application. The Roth isn't just a conversion target in your 60s. It's your ACE card in your 70s. Tom and Linda, in a few years, will have Social Security from both of them, RMDs from their traditional accounts, and some brokerage income. Their baseline taxable income from those sources is already fairly high. When the furnace breaks, and something always breaks, or when they want to take the grandkids somewhere meaningful and it costs $30,000, pulling that from the Roth means zero added taxable income, zero additional Social Security becoming taxable, zero IRMAA exposure. The drywood is there exactly when they need it to absorb a life event without a tax spike. That is what Roth flexibility looks like in practice. It's not just a growth vehicle, it's a fire break. But what about state taxes? Great question. The answer is it depends entirely on your state. And this is exactly the kind of thing where a session with a fee-only fiduciary financial planner or a CPA who specializes in retirement income pays for itself in 30 minutes. Some states, like Florida and Texas, have no income tax, which means the federal analysis is basically the whole story. Other states tax IRA withdrawals as ordinary income alongside the federal bill, which makes the case for Roth conversions even stronger. Don't let state tax complexity paralyze you, but do factor it in before you run the numbers. Let me give you the 3-level framework for actually executing this. I'm calling it the wetwood principle because at this point we are completely committed. Level 1 is the planning level. This happens in your late 50s and early 60s. Ideally, before your last paycheck. You're doing 3 things. You're estimating your Social Security benefits at various claiming ages using the Social Security Administration's online tools. You're projecting your RMDs by taking your current traditional IRA balance, applying a conservative growth rate of 5 to 6%, and seeing what the account looks like at age 73 or 75. Then dividing by 26.5 to estimate your first required distribution. And you're drawing a picture of what your taxable income looks like in your 70s if you do absolutely nothing different today. If that projected picture has you reliably above the $44,000 combined income threshold every year for Social Security taxation, you have a wetwood problem that is currently curable. Level 2 is the execution level. Year by year in retirement, you run what I call the annual income calibration. You ask, what is my fixed income this year from Social Security, pensions, or part-time work? What is the gap between that and my spending target? How much can I pull from the taxable brokerage at 0 or 15% long-term capital gains rates without pushing into IRMA territory or Social Security taxation? How much Roth conversion can I do within the 12% bracket before I hit the torpedo or an IRMA threshold? How much wetwood do I have to pull this year because of required minimum distributions? The annual calibration is roughly a 2-hour exercise, once per year, potentially once with a tax professional. It protects you from tens of thousands in unnecessary tax in that year alone, multiplied by however many years you run it. Level 3 is the emergency level. Life happens, and it doesn't ask about your tax bracket. When you face an unplanned large withdrawal, you need to know quickly which bucket costs the least in that specific year. In some years, the Roth is the correct answer, even if your plan said, save it for later. If an unplanned IRA withdrawal would push your Maggie just over an IRMAA threshold and add $2,000 a year to your Medicare premiums, potentially for life, spending the dry wood ahead of schedule is the cheaper choice. Knowing this in advance, in a calm moment, is the difference between a good decision and an expensive one made under stress. Back to David, one final time. David is 64, sitting on $800,000 of wet wood, looking at a plan to just spend his way through the taxable brokerage first before touching the IRA. If David takes level 1 seriously, runs the RMD projection, sees that his 73-year-old self is staring down $50,000 plus forced withdrawals every year, he has 9 years of runway to fix it. 9 years of the cheapest Roth conversions he will ever do, 9 years of moving wet wood to dry wood while he's in the lowest income bracket of his post-retirement life. By the time David is 73, his Roth could be several $100,000 larger. His IRA could be materially smaller. His Medicare costs could be lower. His Social Security could be less taxable. David doesn't become wealthy by fixing this. He just stops losing money he shouldn't be losing. And this is the psychology of it that I find genuinely fascinating. Paying tax now feels like a loss. Converting $30,000 of your traditional IRA to Roth in a year when you didn't have to, when you could have just let it sit, feels like you're giving money away. The tax payment is immediate and tangible. The benefit is abstract and 20 years away. Human brains are not wired for this trade. We are wired to avoid visible, immediate costs, even when the invisible future cost is 3 or 4 times larger. The IRS has understood this for a very long time. They designed the entire deferred taxation system around it. You contributed pre-tax because it felt good to reduce your taxable income today. Now the bill is coming, and it's larger than the original saving because of 4 decades of compounding and never updated thresholds. That's not a conspiracy. It's just how deferral and incentive structures work when a human brain is involved. The people who beat this system don't have special access or insider information. They do something much less glamorous. They run the projections, they understand the thresholds, and they pay a little tax now to avoid a lot of tax later. That's it. That's the whole game. Here's your practical checklist, calibrated specifically to this decision, not generic retirement advice. Number 1, run the RMD projection this year. Take your current traditional IRA and 401k balance. Assume 5 or 6% annual growth. Project forward to age 73 or 75, depending on your birth year. Divide the result by 26.5. If that number, added to your expected Social Security, pushes your combined income above $44,000 for married filers or $34,000 for single filers, you are on a trajectory toward the torpedo zone. Start the conversion plan. Number 2, know the IRMA thresholds for 2 years before you turn 65. Your Medicare premium in your first year on Medicare is based on your income 2 years prior. Structure your conversions and large withdrawals so that your modified adjusted gross income in those pre-Medicare years stays below $106,000 if you're single, or $212,000 if you're married, using 2025 figures. If you're going to convert aggressively, do it before that window closes. Number 3, don't leave your taxable brokerage account alone in your early retirement years out of a vague sense that it's safer to leave investments growing. In the years when your ordinary income is low, before Social Security is fully activated, before RMDs begin, you can harvest long-term capital gains at 0% federally. That 0% window in 2025 covers up to $96,700 in long-term gains and qualified dividends for married couples filing jointly whose overall taxable income is low enough. Use that window. It won't stay open forever, and it doesn't automatically apply. You have to plan into it. Number 4, every year run the 3-trap check explicitly. Calculate your projected combined income for Social Security taxation. Check if your modified adjusted gross income is approaching an IRMA tier. Confirm your required minimum distribution for the year. If any of those 3 numbers is within $10,000 of a threshold, that is a red flag worth 15 minutes of analysis before you pull anything. The meta principle underneath all of this is simple. The order in which you withdraw from accounts in retirement can matter more than the investment returns you earned inside those accounts while accumulating. That is not an exaggeration. Two retirees with identical balances, identical Social Security, identical spending targets, identical investment returns, different withdrawal sequences can have a six-figure gap in lifetime taxes paid. One of them reads this stuff and sequences intelligently. The other one pulls from the biggest pile first and calls it a plan. Lazy investing built more fortune than crypto memes. And lazy retirement tax planning, the assumption that you'll figure it out when you actually need the money, destroys more of that fortune than a bad market year ever will. The wet wood is sitting there waiting. Pull it in the right order, or convert it now while conversion is cheap, or accept that the smoke is going to follow you. That's all I've got. Go run the projection.